I'm about to hit this vintage chest of drawers with brass inlay galore. Hey, I'm Cole. When it comes to furniture restorations and makeovers, I am a repeat offender. The fanciest tool I own is a cordless drill. Being a dad to this cool dude is my most favorite thing to do, and I've chosen to believe that if I skate often, surely I'll remain forever young. Now let's get stuck in to today's project. Oh, but before we get started, if you are a regular viewer, you might notice my workshop is looking a little bit different today. I'm actually filming this from New Zealand rather than the UK where I normally work. I am spending about 6 weeks here visiting my family and friends, and I'm using my parents' sheet metal factory to help me out so I can still bring you guys some videos. This is a solid wood vintage dresser, and apart from it being extremely dated, it really only has a few cosmetic issues. But the purpose of this project is to show you that getting creative with some hardware and brass inlay can completely change the appearance of a piece. And in this case, I'm going for an architect's cabinet style makeover. These band-aids are making me feel really icky, so I'm excited to get rid of them. Fortunately, I don't need to use these handles again, but sadly, I'm going to have to break them to get them off. The products in New Zealand are quite different to the products that I would usually use in the UK. So if there's any product recommendations you're looking for, I always leave those in the description of the video, so be sure to check those out. This orbital sander is a little bit different to the one I use at home, which is run by electricity, whereas this one goes via the compressor. So I'll head upstairs and get that turned on, because at the moment, you'll see nothing will happen when I hit the trigger. Some of you may be more familiar with a compressor that looks like this one, which absolutely would work, but in the factory he's got this monster sized compressor that's all plumbed in, so I'm going to use this one instead. There are quite a few watermarks, stains, a few bits and pieces here, but being a solid wood piece, it kind of means that I can sand my heart out, so I'm hoping that the sander alone will get rid of all of these marks. And that is good enough for me. The sun is trying to break through, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time outside, marking up exactly where I want to put my brass inlay. And this is what I land on. So I'm basically going to give the appearance that the top 3 drawers are split into 2, and the bottom 2 drawers, which are a little larger, are split into 3. Now I've just attached this steel bar to extend the length of the drawer, because as I run the router down, I will run out of space and the line will become crooked, so that will just ensure I get a nice straight cut. This thing is so heavy. Clearly I didn't put it on properly. Fortunately, the thickness of the brass was the perfect match with the router bit that I used, so it should give it a nice snug fit. Now I had one piece of this flat bar brass and I needed to order some more to fill in the rest of the gaps. Sadly, in the whole of New Zealand I could only get 4 more pieces at about 80 centimeters each, which means for the 2 bottom drawers I'm not going to have enough length to do the 2 strips. Instead I'm just going to do 1 down the middle. So each drawer on the face will appear to have 2 drawer fronts rather than the 3 at the bottom like I had hoped. It is now the next day and I have cut this one piece to the perfect length. I just used a saw to do that, a hand saw, and the rest of the brass strips have arrived. So I'll unpack those and get those cut to size as well. On my channel, I am usually all about just using the very basic tools, which you absolutely can to cut this brass. Just use a handsaw. In this case, I'm using this monster saw only because it's here. I just wanted to use it, have a turn on it. It did make it faster, but you don't need this. It's certainly overkill for what I'm doing here. I'm now going to give this brass a little bit of a buff. Again, you don't need anything fancy. I would usually just use 1000, 1500 and 2000 grit sandpaper with a little bit of water. But in this case, this tool is here, so I'm going to use it. It does make it a little bit easier. It's definitely a lot faster. As mentioned, we recently travelled from the UK to New Zealand. We did that across New Year's Eve, and the little guy did really well. My wife and I, we have another vlog channel, which is Sophia and Cole. I'll leave a link to that in the video description. That's basically anything kind of DIY, travel, lifestyle. And I have just this minute dropped the second video on that channel, which has got a bit of this New Zealand trip in it as well.
You're teasing. You ready? Good boy.
I now sand the whole thing down to 240 grit before I get started on the stain. Now, I certainly don't recommend going out to buy a chip brush to apply stain. I'm just using it because it's all I had on hand. What I do recommend is that you use what you have on hand. Once I'd wiped the excess off with a cloth, I don't think you'd be able to tell what I'd even used to apply it. But of course, there'll be some professionals in the comments that can absolutely tell and will surely tell me how it should be done. But you know, more engagement. I would usually recommend using hard wax oil. That's probably what I would use if I was in the UK and had access to it. Otherwise, probably a polyurethane. But I just happened to have a can of this wood sealer. I used 3 coats of it, did a light sand in between coats, and it actually came up quite nicely. So that was just I think it was a Rust-Oleum brand, this one. I'm now ready to apply the brass strips. Now, the fit is super snug, but I'm just using a little bit of glue just as backup. I don't think it's needed, but put it there just in case. It is now time for some hardware to finish it off. I'm actually really happy with how this piece looks, and if I wasn't leaving New Zealand, I would probably keep it. I think it looks pretty cool. I know it won't be everyone's cup of tea. I'm certainly open to your feedback, so let me know what you think in the comments. Now with this hardware, I am just using the screws that came with them. Ideally, a more authentic look would be to have sort of the flathead screws, but I don't have any on hand and I don't have time to get some, so these will just do for now. As this video comes to an end, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for tuning into my channel. If you've been here before, thank you so much for your continued support. If you're new here and you've liked it, please drop me a comment or a like. Even watching some of my old footage, it all really helps me on my YouTube journey. And if you've loved it, maybe even a subscribe isn't out of the question. And as mentioned earlier, if you're interested in my other vlog channel, I will leave a link in the description. Anyhow, thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy.